Hello everybody. In this video we are going to continue to discuss the results of Collier and Thomas, and then we'll also be looking at what the two-way developmental bilingual programs are all about and also newcomer programs. So this graph should look familiar to you. In class we discussed how the two-way developmental bilingual programs produce the best results for our English learners. And to refresh your memory, the two-way developmental programs are where we have ideally half of the class is native English speaking, the other half is of another language, could be Spanish, could be Arabic, could be Cantonese, whatever the language is. And the students are grouped together to support each other in learning each other's language with the goal of both groups becoming bilingual and biliterate. And I told you in class that this is our fastest growing bilingual education program, which is exciting because it is producing the best results. So let's look into that program a little bit more in depth. Now, throughout the rest of the nation, that program is called two-way bilingual. In California, we like to be a little bit different, so we refer to that program as dual immersion. In other words, both groups are being immersed in another language. And the purpose of the program, as I already mentioned, is that both the native English speakers and the non-native speakers are becoming bilingual. The way that it's set up is that you're in a district where you have a lot of English learners, ideally from the same primary language. So in Azusa, for example, there's a dual immersion program in English and Spanish because that's the largest population they have. But in other districts, like in LA Unified, they have dual immersion programs in 4 or 5 different languages. So they have a Korean and English dual immersion program. They have a Cantonese English program. They have Spanish and English. They have Vietnamese and English. I think those are the 4 that they currently have. Pomona has a school. It's actually one of the schools that's in Diamond Bar that has a Cantonese and English program. So it just really depends on the population that you're serving. So the students are grouped together. They're not pulled out. Part of the day and part of the content is delivered in English. The other part is delivered in whatever the other language is. The students serve as peer tutors. There's a lot of group interaction. And there are 2 main models. The first one is called a 90-10 model. And the 90-10 model means 90% of the day in kinder is done in the language that's not English. 10% of the day is done in English. And then each year it moves more towards parity. So first grade, it's 80% of the day in the non-English language, 20% in English. Until by the time you get to 4th grade, it's 50-50. Other programs actually start with 50-50. 50% of the day is in English, 50% is in Spanish or whatever the other language is. Now remember, these programs start in kindergarten. And you really need to have a stable population to be able to do this, because think about, you have a 3rd grader come in and all of the other students have been learning Spanish for the past 3 years. The student comes in and doesn't know any Spanish. He or she is going to be at a disadvantage, just like the English learner who comes in and doesn't have any English. So if you have a really transient population, this is probably not a program that you want to go with. These programs now have been around. They really started pretty much in the 80s. So we now have over 30 years of research that show how well students do in these programs. And the cool thing is that they now have merged into middle school and high schools. And what I mean by that is parents were so happy with the results that they were asking, they said, okay, my students 6th grade or 7th grade going on to middle school, junior high, and I want the language to continue. So some schools have will do like 2 periods. So it might be math and science are taught in Spanish, let's say, for the students who have gone through the bilingual, the two-way bilingual program at the elementary level, so that they can continue having part of their day continuing to develop their second language. And you're even seeing that in high schools where these students, to continue their language development, instead of going through the traditional Spanish 1, Spanish 2, they'll have more advanced Spanish classes, or they'll allow those students to take community college Spanish classes and get college credit at the high school level. So it's really neat to see these programs develop. Now, if you have students who have some neurodiverse challenges, for example, maybe a specific learning disability, this wouldn't be the program that would be right for them. So it's not going to be for everybody, but we have seen, as I've mentioned, really good results with this type of program. And I'm going to have you look at it in action. You'll see an example at the elementary and then an example in the middle school, which is exciting. So dual immersion programs are long-term programs. They run at least kindergarten through 5th grade. And as I said, they're extending. Currently, we have over 400 programs in California and more than 1,400 programs in the US. So it's very rapidly growing, but still, you're not going to see it every place. But let's look at an interactive map that shows you where you're going to see the dual immersion program. So I've given you this website in your handout, and you can see, let me scroll down, the states over here, I think don't have any, but if we go to California, you can see the whole list and where they're located, and we can zoom in. Oh, let's just look at them all. Actually, sorry, I skipped over the first page. So you can see right there, there's a middle school in LA. Here's an elementary school in Moreno Valley. It's telling me how far it is from my house. Inglewood. So you can get the whole list. It will tell you what language. Look here, Laguna Hills High School, dealing with this, and it's a Spanish dual immersion. So always English and then whatever the second language is. So there are schools, there's another middle school, and you're going to see in California, the vast majority of these are in Spanish. But depending upon where we look at, for example, some schools that are up farther north, you might see a different language. Now, of course, when I'm looking for one, I'm not going to find one. I guess it's because it's going closer to my house. So I'm going to keep searching until I find one that's in a different language, and I might have already skipped over some on the first page. Who knows? But yes, definitely. See, here we go. In San Diego, here's a dual immersion program that's in Chinese Mandarin. And also, I forgot to mention, it's showing you which model. Are they using the 50-50? Are they using the 90-10? So I encourage you, oh, look here. Here's one in Hebrew. You can go on and get more information about each school. They also have resources. They have articles all about dual immersion. So take some time to just explore this. And my own daughter, the youngest, she went through a dual immersion program. And because of that, it's really helped her to develop that literacy in Spanish. She could get the oral Spanish from us, but it really helped her to be able to read and write in Spanish. So take some time to explore that website. And then I also am going to show you those videos of dual immersion programs in action so that you have a visual for how these programs operate.